Africa is not poor. That truth may feel uncomfortable to some, because for a long time, the world has been comfortable believing the opposite. For generations, Africa has been described using only its wounds, never its strength. Images of hardship were repeated, until they became the only story people remembered. Slowly, a continent with thousands of cultures and histories was reduced to a single picture. But Africa's story did not begin with struggle, and it does not end there. Long before Africa was named by others, Africans named themselves. They understood who they were, where they came from, and how they belonged to the land. Life was built around community. No one survived alone. The child belonged to everyone. The land was respected, not owned. Elders were libraries of wisdom, and stories were lessons, not entertainment. Africa understood that life was more than wealth. It was identity, purpose, and connection. Empires rose because people worked together. Trade routes existed not only for goods, but for ideas. Knowledge moved freely. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy were practiced in ways that were not always written down, but deeply understood. Africa was not behind. Africa was different. Then the rhythm was broken. When outsiders arrived and saw Africa's wealth, they no longer saw people. They saw opportunity. They did not ask how Africa lived. They decided how Africa should serve them. The value of African life was replaced with the value of African labor. Villages were raided. Families were shattered. Parents watched children disappear beyond the horizon, never knowing if they were alive or dead. Songs turned into mourning. Silence became a language. The damage was not only in bodies taken away, it was in trust broken, cultures interrupted, and futures stolen. And when the chains were removed, the scars remained. Africa was told it was free, yet it was still controlled. Its land was taken, renamed, and ruled. Its people were taught to doubt themselves. Systems were built that rewarded obedience and punished independence. Borders were drawn with no understanding of the human cost. Communities that had shared food and festivals for generations were separated. Old rivalries were created where none existed before. Africa was left to manage confusion it did not create. Even so, Africa endured. Across the continent, life adapted. People learned to survive inside systems that were never designed for them. They learned to create joy where resources were few. They learned to hope even when tomorrow was uncertain. Africa's strength became quiet, but it never disappeared. The world often asks why Africa struggles, but rarely asks how Africa survives. How people continue to love, to laugh, to build families, to dream, despite everything history has placed on their shoulders. Africa's wealth has never only been in the ground, it has always been in its people, in the way mothers protect their children with everything they have, in the way communities share what little there is, in the way young people imagine futures no one prepared for them. The modern world depends deeply on Africa, even when it refuses to admit it. The minerals that power technology come from African soil. The food that fills tables begins on African farms. The culture that shapes music, fashion, and language carries African roots. Yet Africa is often left out of the reward. This imbalance continues not because Africans lack ability, but because systems still favor extraction over fairness. But history is shifting again. Across Africa, voices are rising. Not in anger alone, but in purpose. Young Africans are choosing to define themselves. They are telling stories that were once ignored. They are solving problems with creativity instead of permission. They are reclaiming identity without asking approval. Africa is remembering itself. This remembering is powerful. When a people remember who they are, they stop accepting what they are told they are worth. Confidence grows. Vision expands. Silence breaks. Africa has been patient because it had to be. But patience is not weakness. The continent that survived centuries of exploitation is not fragile. It is resilient beyond measure. Its story cannot be erased because it lives in millions of lives, spoken and unspoken. Africa is not asking to be saved. Africa is asking to be understood. And understanding begins when the world listens, not to one story, but to many. When it sees Africa not as a problem, but as a partner. Not as a past mistake, but as a future possibility. Africa is still standing, still creating, still becoming. And those who take time to truly listen will realize that Africa's story has never been about poverty. It has always been about survival, strength, and the refusal to disappear. Moral lesson: never judge a people by the pain they endured. True wealth is found in resilience, identity, and the courage to keep rising, even when history tries to hold you down. This story is from Perry Porch Lifestyle. Let me know what you think about the story. And don't forget to subscribe for more sweet story about Africa. Thank you.
This is the story they never wanted the world to hear. Today, we break the silence. This is a story of silence, strength, and survival. It changes your view of Africa forever.
This is not a story of poverty, but a story of silence, strength, and survival. Africa was already full.
This is not a story of poverty, but a story of size, set, and survival. One side, it changes everything.
When foreigners arrived, they came to take. They traded mirrors for gold. Then they brought chains. When foreigners arrived, they came to take. They traded mirrors for gold. Then they brought chains. When foreigners arrived, they came to take. They traded mirrors for gold, then brought chains. When foreigners arrived, they came to take. They traded mirrors for gold, then brought chains.
One day, in Europe, men sat around tables. They drew straight lines, quietly.
The mother who wakes up at 4 a.m. to sell food so her child can go to school.
It's for my child's future. I am strong.
Africa's not lazy. Africa's overworked. In villages, people share their last meal. In cities, young Africans build businesses. Why? Africa is one of the richest continents on Earth. Gold, oil, you're smart, from African minerals. Yet Africans are told they are
behind. Africa is exploited.
And now, a new Africa is rising.
Young Africans are telling their own stories. They are no longer waiting for permission. If the world won't tell our story, we will.
This story is not just about Africa. Africa is a classroom. You can take everything, but not their spirit. Africa is rising. So the next time you hear someone say Africa is poor, remember this story. And now, Africa is speaking.
If you believe African stories deserve to be heard, watch another story on this channel, because this is only the beginning.